Hey everybody, before I get started, I just want to mention a couple of ways that you can engage with me on a more personal level. I have a few avenues set up and I keep focusing on one, and I figured why don't I make a short little video talking about all of them real quick before we get into these episodes. So first thing, Patreon. There's a link in the episode description, in every episode description to the Patreon, as well as a video on the feed called Major Announcement that has all the details of what each tier offers and how much they cost. I implore you to check that out. I offer a lot of cool shit for my patrons. Second thing, the Discord channel. There's also a Discord link in the episode description and in every episode description. I have multiple channels set up there for each show that I'm covering, and it's a great way to just engage with me. I have a channel set up for MMA talk as well. I'm a big MMA fan, so if you're an MMA fan, you can check that out as well. There's a link to the Discord in the episode description. And then lastly, the Facebook and Twitter. Social media. Follow me on there. I post news on there. When I say news, I mean like, hey, I'm stopping covering this show. Hey, I'm starting covering this show. Let me know what you think about this. I do live watches of things on Facebook where like I'll check in and say I'm watching so-and-so show, and then I'll like live comment while I'm watching it, and that'll be cool if maybe you watch that show too and you want to watch along with me, or you're watching it later and you will see my thoughts, which are usually pretty entertaining because I'm usually pretty high when I'm writing them. So check out all those links in each episode description, and let's talk about this episode. Peace.
One mic, one mic. Yeah. All I need is one mic. One mic. Yeah. All I need is one mic. One mic. One mic.
Hey everybody, welcome back to One Mic, and today I'm here to talk about Season 6, Episode 5 of FX's Snowfall, entitled Ebony and Ivory. I think this episode probably is referring to the relationship that we see form. Well, I guess we don't really want to call it a relationship, but the fake relationship that we see form between Veronique's mom and Teddy's dad in this episode. It gave very much Michael Jackson and Paul McCartney vibes. I don't know if the song played at some point in the episode. It might have. I might have missed it. But even if it didn't play, I think the connection, I think, is fairly on the surface what that title is referring to. But I kind of want to talk about that whole thing because, well, I'll get to it in a moment. But I'm going to transition into it by starting with how this episode opened yet again by answering a question that I had in the previous episode. So, as I suspected last week, we opened this week's episode answering my whole question about what are Veronique and her mom up to in Kansas, and specifically Kansas City. Well, it looks like Franklin's guy, who looks like old Donald Glover, located Teddy's dad, and that is some leverage for Teddy's bitch ass that Franklin plans on using over him in this episode. And this was an interesting episode this week because there are a couple of things that I really, really liked. But I have small, kind of like counterpoint things to each of those things that I didn't like. And they're not like huge things where I'm just like, oh, this is a big time flaw. But it's kind of weird that like two of the things that I was more entertained by in this episode, the two things that I found, I think, the most compelling, both had issues with them. But we'll start right away by talking about the first example because it ties into what I've already been talking about, which is the whole situation with Veronique, her mom, Franklin, and Teddy's father. So they established very early in the episode, right away, like within the first couple of sentences, that Veronique and her mom are in Kansas City for Teddy's dad. And I really love, again, how ultimately all of this played out. Like, I love how it ended with Franklin arriving, killing the father and burning the house down. I absolutely loved the way Franklin is like taunting Teddy over the phone. It's Franklin, Teddy, Freddie. That's why that happened. He's taunting Teddy over the phone, saying like absolutely horrific shit to him. Like, I'm gonna drain your wife and kid of their blood just like I did your stank fucking daddy. Like all terrible things. And then you see Veronique and her mom like just horrified in the background, stunned, and they're like lit with the flickering light of the fireplace. It was so fucking cool. Like, some people might look at it as like a little bit like, okay, you guys are doing a lot. It's a little bit heavy-handed with the whole thing, with what you want to portray Franklin as. But I thought it was a truly villainous moment. Like, it's kind of like Franklin's like Darth Vader turn, kind of. And I just thought it was a really cool scene to look at and to see play out, even if it was a smidge over the top. I loved it though. But like I said, counterpoint, what I wasn't a fan of how this con played out over the entire duration of the episode. And I think a better way they could have done this would have been to not establish right away that it was Teddy's dad that they were after, and leave us kind of like wondering like who this guy is, what the plan is, all that kind of stuff. Because then you can unveil both the plan and the identity at the end, and then the whole game, while we're watching it play out, is more intriguing. Because we're like, what is she doing? Why is she dressed this way? Who is this old man? What's going on? And like, we're willing to put up with it a little bit longer. But I know that the end result is leverage against Teddy, because I know this is Teddy's dad. The episode-long charade just felt kind of tedious. Like, okay, can we get to where you guys start executing on whatever it is that you have planned? And like, that's the only thing I felt like they kind of fucked up. It's not a huge complaint, but I did find myself growing impatient, like with the charade, since I knew who it was and what the goal was the entire time. So even once Franklin shows up, they still are pretending like to be a concerned couple, and I'm just like, come on, this is a bit much, guys. But I want to transition to talk about Franklin's aspect of the story, Franklin's plot line. So while this is going on, the whole thing with Veronique and her mom and Teddy's dad, Franklin is holed up with Kane, who says that he can't leave until he figures out a way for Kane to be able to get to Jerome and Louis. And then we see Franklin like look at, I can't remember if it was a picture or something on the TV that had some horses, and then the scene ends. I like how the next time we see Franklin, he's like walking around with Sissy trying to convince her to run off. And as soon as that scene started, I thought, oh shit, he gave away to get Jerome and Louis that Kane was satisfied enough to let him go. And I thought that was a smart move on the show's part by telling me an interesting and important piece of information without telling it to me directly. Just by having Franklin appear somewhere else, that told me some information. And I thought that was really fucking cool how they did that. But while I'm on the subject, though, I'm not a fan of Sissy and Gustavo's sister to a much greater degree, both having that same stubborn, I don't want to leave attitude. It's just like my own kind of like personal pet peeve. It's like, okay, you're in a shitty situation. Don't make it shittier by being super stubborn. Like, Gustavo's sister was even worse. She's like turning down guaranteed safety with witness protection. Like, if you like, she's turning down safety, and she's turning down and she doesn't want to leave. So like, you ever heard like the term plot armor? Like, it's like, okay, the plot protects a person from like improbable circumstances because they need that person alive. This is the opposite of that. This is like plot vulnerability, where like they have her be super stupid to make her vulnerable later. Like, that's what this feels like, and it just kind of, I know, it just kind of irked me. But it did turn out that Franklin ends up giving up the horse stable that we've seen Louis at up to this point, and we also learned that Kane wants Louis alive. We don't see, well, I don't know if it's just Louis and Jerome, I don't know, but we don't see how that plays out, but we will next week probably. And moving on to Jerome and Louis, actually. Segues, man. I'd say they're kind of just like working themselves out, but I prepare my notes, and you guys know that, so all of this is orchestrated. But when we first see Jerome and Louis in this episode, they're being informed by Buckley that not only did Kane survive the drive-by shooting, but he survived it with the help of Franklin. And there's an interesting note for me in this scene where Louis is kind of like, God damn, we almost had the 2-for-1, and we didn't get either one of them. And then conversely, like, she's doing that in the background, like, just kind of like, oh, God damn, we could have had Franklin too, shit, could have ended everything. And she's in the background, and Jerome's in the foreground, looking kind of like, I can't believe my wife is sitting here lamenting the fact that we failed to kill our nephew. Like, I just thought that was like, not funny, but I'm going to talk about that a little bit more later as it pertains to Jerome. But later, Dion visits Jerome and Louis, saying he wants Leon dead, and he expects them to starve him out by, like, you basically not selling them drugs. And they're like, look, you know it's all business, bro. Like, the same way you was willing to do business, like, the same way you told me that it's just business. Well, he doesn't say this specifically, but this is what we're supposed to glean from it. Like, the same way you told me it's just business when you bought drugs from Franklin, even knowing that it's the drugs that he stole from me, this is business, bro. If Leon got the loot, it's happening. And Dion makes a great point, he fails to point out that it was just business when he wanted, because that doesn't make his argument, but that it was just business when he was willing to buy from Franklin. But he points out the great point that he helped them when they wanted to get Black Diamond and Dallas. and don't you owe me one? And side note, what's up with Dallas? We haven't seen her in a while. That whole Dallas and Black Diamond thing kind of went away for a little bit. I wonder if they're gonna come back to that. So Dion throws around some like casual misogyny and insults Louis, and Jerome sends her away and says that it's the young folks that's the problem, not them, the OGs, and that them, the OGs, they're the last of a dying breed. And Dion's like, yeah, I ain't no dying breed, bro. And like he takes a drink and he leaves, and I'm just like, that felt like you a dying breed now. So I think I put a hit on everybody at this point. Like I think I got Franklin dying, I got Dion dying. Do I have Leon dying? I can't remember if I have Leon dying. I might. I feel like it. I don't know. I feel like I've got everybody dying at this point. So I got to be wrong about something, or everything. But then Jerome leaves, and he leaves kind of like he has like a tear in his eye. He's like, I'm just going out. Louis like, hold on. He's just like, I'm leaving. Don't worry about where I'm going. And I don't know if I was looking for greater meaning in this scene that we see later with Jerome, but he seems to visit an old friend. And the old friend seems to want Jerome to leave because he's nervous about Jerome's reputation and the danger that he brings. He doesn't want to say it directly, so he keeps trying to get Jerome out of there, like subtly, like, you can come back next week. Here's some money. Okay, well, we'll take care of it. You come back later, pick your car up. I'm going to stay and hang out. Like, Jerome keeps finding reasons to stay while this guy keeps trying to find reasons to get him out of there. And eventually Jerome leaves and clearly hurt. There's a whole thing with this gun, and he's crying. And he leaves after the same car drives by twice, and the guy points it out. And the only thing I could think to make of this scene, and this is why I said I was going to come back to how Jerome was looking after discovering that they didn't kill Franklin. I think Jerome is coming to understand that this game has taken everything from him. Like, he's lost his nephew, figuratively, at least for now, figuratively. His sister is, like, in the drug game and working with the KGB. His wife is, again, lamenting failing to kill their nephew. He's lost countless others prior to this. And now, because of who he is and his reputation, he can't even just hang out with an old friend who they have a deep history with because the friend is worried about what kind of trouble Jerome might bring. And, like, that's my interpretation of the scene. And I kind of struggled with this one because, like, on my initial watch, it was hard for me to kind of understand what they were trying to explain to me here, especially when Jerome's got the tear at the end when he's giving the money. And I'm like, this conversation played out in a way that's a little different than one that I think will result in tears. So I'm watching it again. I watch it again. I'm just kind of like, I don't know. I feel like this is the conclusion that I came to, but I'm wondering if maybe I missed something that was kind of like buried in the subtext about who this guy was or what kind of shit they got into back in the past, that maybe I'm missing like a greater unspoken meaning here. But like I said, I think they were possibly being super subtle with whatever relationship these two had in the past, and I was supposed to piece it together. Well, I don't think that, but I suspect that that's a possibility, and I might have just missed it, but all I pieced together was that they had a relationship in the past. So when I said at the top I had a couple of things I liked, but that I also had criticisms of, this is the other one. Like, I wish the messaging in this scene was a little bit clearer, but I love the scene overall. Like, I love the interaction. Again, Amin Joseph, in this season, in this scene, like the way he I can't remember what the friend says to him when he grabs the gun out of the trunk, but Jerome's just holding the gun like, what, motherfucker? Like looking like, what you got to say now? Like, I just thought Amin Joseph was so good in that scene, and he's had a great season, man. He really has. Talking about Leon real quick, he's dealing with the after effects of his bout with Dion. The whole crew wants to know what's going on. Like, is Leon back? Are you not back? Like, what's going on? And they say that there's basically too much inconsistency. Like, 1 minute you here, 1 minute you not, 1 minute you a thug, the next minute you Malcolm X, then you beating up Dion. Like, we just want some sort of stability and something reliable, something we can depend on. And they really do sound like a very downtrodden workforce. like I feel like they're like a week or two away from asking for like health insurance and a pension, but these are still valid things to be asking for. Like, look, man, I know we illegal, I know we doing all kinds of crimes, but can we at least get some consistent messaging from our leadership? Like, hey, that's a fair request, right? And then Leon agrees in a way that much to Wanda's chagrin, I think was a little bit over the top. He agrees by essentially going outside and calling everybody a pussy. And like, I mean, if no one's gonna call you out on it and step to you about it, I guess you're right, and I guess you get to be in charge. But I don't know. I thought that was an interesting way to state that he was back and ready to be in charge. Like, hey, all you guys are pussies. Anybody got a problem with that? No? All right, I'm in charge then. I was like, oh, that works. So, lastly, I want to talk about Teddy. We first see Teddy. He's sharing the pics he took of Reuben outside of the club meeting that Reuben had with Gustavo last week. He's sharing those pics with his boss, Havermeyer, I think this guy's name is. I can't remember. And he's correctly assessed everything. Like, he knows it was the initial approach, so that Gustavo hasn't really been talking with this guy for very long, which is true. But he also notes, I should say, that Gustavo's been acting weird for like a month. And I'm just like, man, Teddy's good, man. He notices everything. The only thing he missed here is that the month, and I can't even say he missed it, he doesn't know, but the month is because the DA essentially doing the same thing with Gustavo a little bit earlier. And why would Teddy think of that? Why would Teddy think of two government agencies approaching Gustavo at the same time, unbeknownst to one another, and Gustavo's keeping them both secret? Like, he would have no reason to believe that. But he does miss that part of it, but he still decides that he wants some surveillance. And just as Teddy's got like his nap time syringe ready for a meetup with Gustavo, Gustavo tells him everything. Coming just short of the full truth by leaving out the whole stuff with the DEA or whatever, but he tells him everything, and Teddy actually seems to buy this, I think, and seems quite relieved. And then Gustavo tells the DEA that Teddy moved the product because of Reuben, which is also true, just also leaving out the part that he's the reason that, that Teddy is concerned about Reuben. So I looked at that kind of like, almost kind of like a callback to how the DEA guy taught Gustavo how to lie. Like, there should always be some truth in it. And he did that. He hit both people with lies that were like 90% truth, but the 10% lie he left out was a big fucking deal. And I thought that was pretty cool. But like, I just don't know if, like, it felt too easy to get Teddy, the part of getting Teddy off his case, that went way too fast. It was like Teddy realized something was up. Teddy had the syringe ready. Gustavo explained, done. And I'm like, I thought this was going to be a little bit of a cat and mouse game here a little bit. But yeah, it felt too easy, but it is still early. So I have some hope that that's going to get brought back up again. We also see Reuben start to hunt Teddy. And here's a cat and mouse game that I am really intrigued by. Teddy's got a slew of people watching Reuben, so that when he leaves, Teddy sneaks in his house. And we see, but Teddy doesn't, that Reuben, who's, again, also a spy, lays these smart-ass traps to let him know if someone has been in his house, like leaving his door exactly 2 fingers length open, so that when Teddy goes into that closet, and again, how would he know to close it exactly 2 fingers back? He doesn't do that, and Reuben later notices, and I just thought that was so fucking cool, man. I absolutely loved how they did that. And I also like the only thing Teddy found that wasn't bland and sterile in this apartment was gay porn. like the way he like is searching around very carefully, very CIA-like, and he opens this thing that's like high up, and he makes a face. He's like, oh, he found something. It's like, it's just gay porn. Like, I thought that was funny. But like, I really liked this. I really like this back and forth with Reuben and Teddy that we saw this week. I hope they continue that a little bit longer. I think it's really cool, just like upping the stakes a little bit. But yeah, that was cool. Like I said, everything a lot of this stuff I thought was really, really good. Just, I wish I had a little bit more clarity on what they were trying to tell me in that scene with Jerome and the friend. And then I also wish they hadn't drawn out, well, I can't say drew out the thing with Teddy's dad. I just wish it felt drawn out because I already knew who he was and what the goal was. And if I didn't know that, I'd have been sitting there like, what the fuck's going on? Like, I would have been so much more so much more engaged if I didn't know who he was already and what the goal was. So I feel like it's not a thing that they did wrong per se. It's just a thing they could have done better, I think. But who the fuck am I? I'm just a regular motherfucker who talks into his iPhone and says what he thinks about television shows. I don't make them. I don't work for fucking Rolling Stone, New York Times. That's just my opinion. I feel like that would have made it a little bit better. But again, what the fuck do I know? So one last thing to talk about before I close out. Actually, no, I don't have that one thing because my one thing was about Gustavo's sister, and I already addressed that. I addressed it organically when I was talking about motherfuckers that irritate me. I automatically started talking about Gustavo's sister. But I didn't like the fact that she said, like, I'm not going to go to witness protection. I don't want to leave. And now it's on you to figure out how to make that happen. Bye. Like, what? Like, why are you being so difficult? Anyway, that's all I got for this week. I will see you guys next week for episode 6. And until then, peace.